an estimated 20,390 people are dead across Europe. Not from a declared war, not from a pathogen, not from a natural disaster in the conventional sense. They died from the air. From heat. More specifically, they died from the nights. From nights where the temperature refused to fall below 20 degrees Celsius, forcing the human heart to work a 24-hour shift without rest. The numbers come from a preprint model published July 2nd by a climate scientist named Dr. Christopher Callahan, 20,390 excess deaths in just 6 days of June, between the 22nd and the 28th. In France alone, a later analysis confirmed over 2,700 fatalities from the same stretch of weather. But here is the detail that truly defines the scale of this event. The temperatures that caused this. The 44. 3 degrees Celsius peak in France, the 41.7 degree record in Germany, were not supposed to happen in our lifetime. A joint analysis by Dr. Callahan and Professor Andrew Dessler, director of the Texas Center for Extreme Weather, confirmed it on July 7th. The extreme heat that settled over France in June of 2026 reached levels that their own climate models did not project would be possible until the 2070s. This is not just a record-breaking summer. It is a 50-year jump into a future that Europe was not built to survive. To understand the mortality, you have to understand the night. The meteorological term is a tropical night. In Europe, that is defined as any night when the ambient temperature fails to drop below 20 degrees Celsius, or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. On its face, the number seems mild. Manageable, it is not. The entire human survival mechanism for heat is predicated on the night. Daytime heat stress is an acute physiological burden. The cardiovascular system goes into overdrive, pumping blood to the skin to radiate heat away through sweat. This is labor. It is a physical workout happening at a cellular level, even for someone sitting perfectly still. The cool down at night is the body's recovery phase. It is when the heart rate can slow, when the system can shed the accumulated stress of the day. Armel Castellan, an advisor at the WHO Climate and Health Joint Office, has been explaining this for years. A day that reaches 38 degrees but drops to 18 overnight is profoundly different from a day that reaches 36 degrees and stays above 25 all night. The second scenario, he states, carries a much higher health risk. During the July 2026 surge, Madrid's overnight lows were forecast to remain at 25 degrees Celsius, nearly 9 degrees above the seasonal average. In Nantes, France, minimum temperatures stalled 10 degrees above the norm. This is the mechanism of mass casualty. The body enters the second day already stressed. It enters the third day in a state of exhaustion. By the fourth, for the elderly, the very young, or anyone with a pre-existing condition, it can become a terminal event. A quiet, invisible heart attack in a sweltering apartment. Zoom out, and the continent itself becomes the antagonist. Europe is warming at more than twice the global average rate. The World Meteorological Organization's John Kennedy confirms it. This is not hyperbole. It is a measured reality. Since the benchmark heatwave of 1976, the continent has warmed by approximately 2 degrees Celsius. But the danger is not just meteorological. It is architectural. European cities, from the grand boulevards of Paris to the medieval cores of Germany, were engineered for a different climate. They were built to survive the cold. Thick walls of stone, brick, and concrete were designed to absorb solar energy during short winter days and radiate that heat inward during long, freezing nights. It was a brilliant, passive heating system for a pre-industrial world. In the 21st century, it has become a death trap. Those same heavy, dense materials now soak up unimaginable thermal loads during prolonged summer heat waves. All day, the stone absorbs the sun. At night, it slowly, relentlessly bleeds that heat back out. Not just into the streets, creating the urban heat island effect, but into the apartments themselves. It turns top-floor flats into convection ovens. This architectural reality is colliding with a cultural and economic one, the almost total lack of air conditioning. In Germany, only about 6% of homes are equipped with AC. Across Western Europe, the figure hovers around 20%. For centuries, it was an unnecessary luxury. Now, it is the determining factor between life and death. The result is a continent of buildings that are actively making the heat worse. And on June 28th, in the small town of Caution in Brandenburg, Germany, near the Polish border, the national thermometer hit 41.7 degrees Celsius. Inside a traditional German home, the temperature would have been even higher. This is the part the aerial satellite maps do not fully capture. On July 5th, the European Space Agency released data from its Copernicus Sentinel-3 satellite. The images went viral. They showed land surface temperatures, not air temperatures. Vast swathes of Spain, France, and Germany were painted in shades of deep, menacing purple and black. These were not the temperatures a weather app reports. This was the temperature of the ground itself, cooking under the sun. That is the energy being absorbed by the roads, the rooftops, and the thick stone walls of a million homes. That is the energy that warps tram tracks and melts asphalt. It is the energy that hours later will radiate back into a bedroom in Paris where someone is trying to sleep. This is what Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, the Director General of the World Health Organization, meant when he stated that 150 million Europeans were living under extreme heat stress. It is not just the daytime peak. It is the relentless 24-hour thermal load on bodies and on infrastructure. The grids are buckling, he warned. The health systems are buckling. Now, here is the part nobody seems to have an answer for. The heat that arrived in June 2026 was, according to the models, an anomaly from the future. The work published by Dr. Callahan at Indiana University and Professor Dessler at Texas A&M is explicit. They are not saying the heat was similar to projections for the 2070s. They are saying the average maximum daily high temperatures registered in France were the 2070s. The future folded back on the present. This fact breaks the conventional narrative of climate change as a slow, linear progression. It suggests the possibility of abrupt, non-linear state shifts in regional weather systems. The mechanism behind this specific event was a meteorological formation known as an omega block, a massive ridge of high pressure originating over the Iberian Peninsula, anchored itself in the upper atmosphere. It acted like a lid on a pot, trapping hot, dry air over Western and Central Europe for days, deflecting cooler, wetter weather systems around it. John Kennedy of the NUMO explains the physics simply. With increased greenhouse gas concentrations, less energy escapes into space. More energy is coming in than going out. That energy is accumulating in the Earth's system. In late June 2026, it accumulated directly over Europe. The official response was a portrait of overwhelmed systems. In Warsaw, where temperatures hit a new national record of 40.5 degrees Celsius, officials scrambled to install public misting stations in city squares. A desperate, almost futile gesture against the scale of the heat. In Paris, the desperation became defiance. Municipal authorities cordoned off the Canal Saint-Martin, warning of poor water quality and the dangers of swimming in the urban waterway. Thousands of residents ignored them. They tore down fences. They climbed over blockades. They poured into the canal. The choice was between a hypothetical risk from polluted water and the certain immediate threat of heat stroke. The images from the canal are a document of systemic failure, society's rules breaking down under the simple, brutal pressure of heat. It is a preview of a world where municipal codes become secondary to the biological imperative to cool down. And beneath this desperation, a deeper conflict is emerging. A philosophical and ethical battle over how to adapt. It is most visible in Germany. As the death toll rose, public health officials, including Dr. Hans Klug, the head of the WHO's Europe office, began advocating for the one thing proven to save lives in a heat wave: mechanical cooling, air conditioning. He argued for a targeted, nuanced adoption, focusing on hospitals, care homes, and protecting the most vulnerable. But this has ignited what the German media is calling an ACK culture war. Environmental groups and some politicians are pushing back hard. Their argument is twofold. First, a massive American-style adoption of ACK units would place an unbearable strain on Germany's already fragile energy grid, risking blackouts precisely when they are most dangerous. Second, the hydrofluorocarbons used as refrigerants in most ACK units are themselves potent greenhouse gases, and the electricity to run them, if generated from fossil fuels, just pours more carbon into the atmosphere. It is the ultimate paradox. The only immediate way to survive the effects of the climate crisis is to deploy a technology that makes the climate crisis worse in the long run. There is no easy answer. It is a choice between immediate death and deferred catastrophe. While officials debate, the market is making its own choice. Sales of portable ACK units are surging. Those who can afford it are buying their way out of the heat, leaving everyone else to suffer in the ambient temperature of a baked city. Let us drill down into the timeline of the collapse. The heat did not arrive in a single day. It built. May 24th, 2026, saw the first signs, with anomalous May records falling across the continent, leading to early uncounted deaths. By June 23rd, the Copernicus satellite confirmed what people on the ground already knew. France was experiencing its hottest June day ever recorded. Between June 24th and June 27th, the silent catastrophe began to register in official statistics. Health authorities in Paris reported over 1,000 localized excess deaths. Funeral homes began to reach capacity. The system was breaking under the strain of processing the dead. Then, on June 28th, the epicenter of the heat dome seemed to settle over the German-Polish border. Caution, a village that most Germans could not place on a map, became a national headline. 41,007 degrees Celsius. A new record. By June 30th, the heat had pushed east, and Poland fell with its own record of 40.5 degrees. It was a slow-motion thermal wave, cresting over one nation after another. Then came the data. The numbers that translated the experience into science. The July 2nd preprint from Dr. Callahan, with its shocking estimate of 20,390 dead in 1 week. The July 5th release of the Copernicus heat maps, giving the crisis a terrifying visual identity. And finally, the July 7th analysis from Callahan and Dessler, confirming that this was not just a hot summer. This was a glimpse of a world 50 years from now. To understand the human cost, you have to move past the numbers and imagine the experience. Imagine being in an apartment in Nantes in early July. The sun has set, but the heat has not. The thermometer on the wall reads 28 degrees Celsius when it should read 18. The bricks of your building are radiating warmth. You open a window, but the air outside is just as hot and thick with humidity. Sweat does not evaporate. It just pools on your skin. Your heart is beating faster than it should be. You cannot sleep. Rest is impossible. The body is still working, still fighting the heat, even in the dark. Now imagine this for 3 nights, 4 nights, 5 nights. This is not discomfort. It is a physical assault. This is what happened in Madrid, where overnight lows stayed an astonishing 25 degrees Celsius. It is what happened across the United Kingdom, where historic highs of 37.7 degrees in Norfolk and 36.1 in Hampshire were followed by oppressive, tropical nights that the country's infrastructure is utterly unprepared for. The British home, designed with carpets and insulation to stay warm, becomes a suffocating trap. The human body is a resilient machine, but it has its limits. A tropical night is the discovery of that limit, repeated over and over in millions of homes simultaneously. This forces a re-evaluation of what we consider a place. The small village of Cochin, Germany, is no longer just a location. It is a data point in a terrifying trend line. It is a symbol of a new vulnerability, a place on the periphery that unexpectedly became the center of a national crisis. The Canal Saint-Martin in Paris is no longer just a waterway. It is a social barometer, measuring the point at which citizens decide that official warnings are less important than their own survival. And the sterile language of climate science, omega block, land surface temperature, positive feedback loop, has now been translated into the brutal reality of excess mortality figures. 2,700 dead in France, 20,390 across the continent. And these are just the initial estimates for a single week in June. The full toll of the summer of 2026 will not be known for months or even years as epidemiologists painstakingly analyze mortality data against temperature records. So what happens now? The heat dome of late June eventually broke down, but the underlying conditions have not changed. A new surge of heat was confirmed sweeping across Western Europe on July 6th, just as the data on the first wave was being published. The focus returned immediately to the lethal overnight lows. The fundamental problem remains. Europe is trapping more energy than it is releasing. The continent's own history, written in brick and stone, is now working against its future, and the political and social will to enact the radical changes required, a complete overhaul of the energy grid, a massive campaign to retrofit millions of buildings, a rethinking of urban design itself, is lagging far behind the accelerating reality of the climate. The agriculture war in Germany is a microcosm of the global dilemma. We know what is happening. We have the data. We have the satellite images. We even have the projections for the future. The problem is that the future is no longer in the future. It arrived on a hot afternoon in late June 2026, and it presented a bill that Europe did not know how to pay. There are three questions that hang over the continent tonight, unanswered by the models or the politicians. How many more summers will arrive 50 years ahead of schedule? What does a society do when its own architecture becomes the primary threat to public health? And what does it mean when the only readily available tool for individual survival is the very thing that accelerates the collective crisis? Tonight, across millions of apartments from the coast of Spain to the plains of Poland, stone and concrete are still performing the function they were designed for. They are bleeding the day's accumulated heat into the dark. The energy that arrived with the sun hours ago is not escaping back into space. It is moving through plaster walls and glass window panes, raising the temperature of a bedroom in Madrid by 1 degree, then 2. It is forcing a human heart in Paris to beat a little faster, to work a little harder, to push blood to the skin in a futile attempt to cool down. It is hard, physical labor, unseen, unending cardiovascular work happening in the quiet of the night. The climate of the 2070s is no longer a projection. It is an observed fact. The heat is here. And the nights are not cooling down.